Alright, what's going on guys? Today we're going to be looking at another World Championship winning deck in Magic the Gathering's history. And this time it is going to be Wolf-Run Ramp, the deck that won the championship in 2011. The World Championship would take place in San Francisco, California, and the deck would be piloted by Jun'ya Iyanaga. And Standard at the time was composed of the Scars of Mirrodin block, the Innistrad block, and the Magic 2012 core set. Alright, so first off, this was a green-red ramp deck. So it played Birds of Paradise, Rampant Growth, and Sphere of the Suns as ways to ramp into more mana. Birds of Paradise, of course, 1 mana 0/1 flying that can tap for any color of mana. Rampant Growth allows you to search for a land and put it into play, and Sphere of the Suns comes into play with 3 charge counters on it, and then you can remove those to add mana. So the plan is simple, just ramp into as much mana as possible, as quick as possible. It also played Solemn Simulacrum, which is always fun to pronounce. I'm sure I did it poorly, but when it enters the battlefield, you get to search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield, so it's another way of ramping. It also lets you draw a card if it dies, but again, just more mana, trying to get mana, lots and lots of mana. So what did it do with that mana? Well, primarily it played Inferno Titan and Primeval Titan. Yep, 2 Titans. So they're both 6 mana 6/6s, but the Inferno Titan has fire breathing, so to speak. 1 red mana to give it +1/+0, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures and or players. So basically, when it comes into play, it's sending 3 damage out, and then when it attacks, at the very least, it's dealing 9, it's attacking for 6, and it's triggering that, kind of lightning bolt-esque ability. Plus, you can pump all your mana into it to make it even bigger. So, Inferno Titan puts out tons of damage. Primeval Titan is a 6 mana 6/6 with trample that, when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may search your library for up to 2 lands and put them onto the battlefield tap. And the important thing here is that they do not have to be basic lands. So that's very powerful. I mean, if you have Primeval Titan, already you have access to 6 mana, and then you get to search for 2 more lands. But this had a win condition attached to it, because 2 of the lands that you could search for were Kessig Wolf-Run and Inkmoth Nexus. So the Wolf-Run is where the deck gets its name, and it's kind of interesting. You can tap it for 1 mana, or you can pay X and 2 mana and tap it to give target creature +X/+0, and it gains trample. So even without the trample part, like with Primeval Titan, remember you had 6 mana to cast it, and then you got 2 lands, so you have 8 lands the following turn. Meaning that you could potentially make the Primeval Titan a 12/6 with trample if you dump all of your mana into Kessig Wolf-Run. Plus you're going to get 2 more lands when it attacks. They'll come into play tapped, but you can get 2 more lands for the following turn. And if the Titan dies, it does give trample, so you can still target like a Birds of Paradise. So yeah, the Wolf-Run, very powerful with Primeval Titan, just because you're getting so much mana, and the deck is built around getting so much mana. So yeah, it adds up. It's really powerful. Now, Inkmoth Nexus, on the other hand, it animates into a 1/1 artifact creature with flying and infect. Now that's important because you can animate it and then target it with the Wolf-Run ramp to give it, several power, flying, and infect, so that you can actually just kill your opponent with poison counters. I mean, this thing was putting out so much mana and so much power with these Titans that it was perfectly capable of just, winning in the typical green-red, just run over your face type of style, but alternatively, it could just kill you with poison counters with an Inkmoth Nexus. It was just, that was an option. Could do that. So yeah, lots of mana, lots of lands, and the lands could kill you. That's Wolf-Run Ramp, basically. 2 more cards the deck played were Devil's Play and Green Sun Zenith. These are both X mana spells, so they're very good in a deck that's putting out tons of mana. Devil's Play deals X damage, which is a pretty typical, type of spell. There's always something like this in Standard, a lot of times. But the important thing here is that it has flashback, so you can actually cast it twice. And that's pretty good considering this deck is putting out so much mana. And you can cast it and then, get a ton of mana from Primeval Titan to cast it with flashback. So yeah, it could add up to a lot of damage. Now, Green Sun Zenith is just kind of not fair. It lets you search your library for a green creature card with converted mana cost X or less, put it onto the battlefield. It's not fair. It's just not fair, because the reason this is so good is because, first off, it allowed you to get to your win condition, but also because the Primeval Titan is giving you so much mana, it allows you to cast this and get more Primeval Titans. You get a Primeval Titan, it gives you tons of mana. So long as you can get up to 7, which you can if you can cast the first Primeval Titan, you can then Green Sun Zenith for a second one, and it's not fair. It's not fair. And remember, when you search for Primeval Titan with Green Sun Zenith, you get 2 more lands when it enters the battlefield. So yeah, basically just, it's good. It's really good. It's really good with Primeval Titan. The deck did have 1 more creature in it. It was Thrun, the Last Troll, which is a 4-mana 4/4 that can't be countered, has hexproof basically, and it can be regenerated. So basically it's just a tank. It's an absolute tank. Your opponent can't counter it, so they can't do anything about it. They cannot target it, and because it can regenerate, you can use Wolf-Run on it to pump it up really big, attack with it freely, knowing that you can regenerate it, and you can do that repeatedly. Alternatively, it's just a tank that sits there defensively and basically neutralizes a creature by blocking every turn and regenerating. So yeah, it was a tank or a missile, depending on, whether you were playing defensively with it or whether you were just flinging it at your opponent basically with a Wolf-Run. So yeah, that's a thing for sure. 2 more cards the deck played were Shock and Galvanic Blast. Now, Galvanic Blast might seem a little bit weird because it didn't have a ton of artifacts. Basically, this deck is playing 5 Shocks, right? Shock is 2 damage for 1 mana. Galvanic Blast also 2 damage for 1 mana. So yeah, they're the same thing. It just so happens that if you do have the Golems, the Solemn Simulacrums, or the Sphere of the Suns, if you have multiples of those, it can potentially deal 4 damage. It was a playing list to get Metalcraft. You weren't going to have Metalcraft most of the time. It's basically a shock that, once in a million times, it would just so happen to deal 4 damage, and that's fine too. But basically it's shock. And the final card in the deck was Slagstorm, 3 damage to each creature or each player. It's just a board wipe against aggro decks, which is good because this deck did spend a few turns trying to build up mana. And that's the deck. Moving on to the mana base. As mentioned earlier, it did run Kessig Wolf-Run and Inkmoth Nexus. The deck also played Rootbound Crag and Copperline Gorge as dual lands, the Crag being part of the check land cycle, and the Gorge one of the fast lands. And then it played basic lands. Yep, just a pile of basics, pretty simple. And then moving on to the sideboard, as always, we won't go too in depth here as that requires an understanding of the entire metagame, but the deck had extra copies of Slagstorm and Thrun, the Last Troll, just in case you needed to change those ratios. It also played Ancient Grudge and Viridian Corruptor as ways to deal with artifacts, and it just so happens that the Viridian Corruptor also has Infect, so it's pretty good with the Wolf-Run as well. It also played Beast Within to destroy a permanent, just any permanent, any troublesome permanent. It goes away, and your opponent gets a 3/3 green beast, which isn't too much of a problem if you have the Titans in play. The deck also played Autumn's Veil, which is kind of funny. It basically allows you to counter blue and black stuff. So if your opponent plays a counter spell, you can counter their counter spell, and this also allows you to counter a creature removal spell. So I feel like this is poetic justice. There you go, guys. If you like green, this was it should feel good to play this, I think. It also had Sword of Feast of Famine in the sideboard, which gives creature +2/+2 and protection from black and green. And when that creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all of your lands. And then finally, Tree of Redemption. Oh, that's recently with Masters 25, that might trigger some people, but yep, Tree of Redemption was a sideboard card in a World Championship deck. 4 mana, 0/13 with Defender that allowed you to exchange your life total with Tree of Redemption's toughness. So basically it allowed you to go back to 13 life, and this could be tutored with Green Sun Zenith. And that's the deck. That is Wolf-Run Ramp, the deck that won the championship in 2011. Ramp into big stuff, get tons of lands. Those lands also just so happen to kill your opponent, or you just steamroll them with really big creatures like, Inferno Titan. Inferno Titan is super fun. Attack, blow up a bunch of stuff. It has fire breathing. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, there you go. Wolf-Run Ramp, guys. Green-red, Wolf-Run Ramp. That's the deck. Now, you are a little bit more familiar with Magic the Gathering's history and another classic deck from years past. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, I have an entire playlist dedicated to these World Championship decks, and you can find a link to that in the description below. Also consider subscribing to the channel, as there will surely be more to come in the future. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.